What's up, guys and gals? Welcome back to the Nerd Castle for the next episode of our Q&A, where you and I hang out for a little while and I answer the questions that you left for me last week. So, this is my favorite series that I do on the channel. Above all the other ones, this is the one that I enjoy the most because I just get to hang out for like 30 minutes and bullshit with all of you. And for whatever reason, that switches something on that a lot of the other things that I do not. And so it's a very, very weird thing for me, but I look forward to this. And so it took me about an hour. I sorted through all your questions. I folded the ones in that needed to be folded because some people ask the same question. Very convenient when that happens because it means that I'm probably going to pick it, especially if 3 or 4 people ask it, because then it's just like bam, 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 bam. It's hitting all the birds with multiple stones. I've never hit a bird with a stone, but I assume at some point somebody hit birds with stones, probably from a sling or something, or like one of those, I don't even know what it's called. It's like a big stick with like a rock throwy thing on the top. A fustibulus, that's what it is, a fustibulus. But anyways, welcome back to the Nerd Castle for the Q&A. Let's get started. Our first question is from Red Menace. If NASA were to somehow build an Ark-like spacecraft to go colonize another planet, would you go? There's a second half of that, but it's contingent on the fact that I say yes, and I'm going to say no. I'm going to let somebody else go and get like the plutonian moth flu or whatever weird disease is on those planets that we haven't been to yet. Like, let's do like a little bit of disease research first. I'm definitely not going to be the first guy off the boat that's just like, it's so beautiful here, and then just like dies of whatever random disease decides to infect him first. There's been a lot of crazy diseases we've had here on the planet Earth, and it's taken us a long time to get used to them and cure a lot of them. And I assume that once we find like a new planet, we're going to have a very, very steep learning curve / survival curve in order to make it. There's going to be new things, new pathogens, new things to make your eyes weepy and your throat shut down. And I don't know, dying of disease just seems like a bad way to go. So I'm going to cut that one off up front and just be like, nah, I don't think that I'm just not that adventurous. That's not me. Never have been, never will be. I mean, I do like adventuring on Earth, but a place where like you don't even know the rules and you like don't even know what can even possibly happen there, that's not adventure. That seems like suicide to me. So anyways, that would be the answer to your question, dear Red Menace. NicoCat asks, how did you tell your super religious family that you were an atheist or an agnostic? It actually came out in a fight. People are always the most honest when they're in the middle of a fight. I was having an argument with my mom, and she said something about, she was like, well, do you even believe in God anymore? And I was like, no! Like, it was like it was like one of those built-up moments where like it could have been handled more maturely. But I was like 14, and so it just came out. And so ever since then, they were like, oh, well, I guess if you don't believe anymore, you have to go to church or do like any of the church stuff anymore. And so I didn't. And actually, it took like 8 years for our relationship to really sort of recover from that tumultuous period. It was just kind of just like this weird period in which my parents are really, really religious people. And so it's a huge deal to them that I don't believe in religion, because that means like I'm not going to heaven and I'm like burning hell and all this crazy other stuff, and they're just like bummed out about that. I'm not that bummed out about it because I feel like all the interesting people are going to be in hell. And so in between like the spearings with the pitchforks and the burning and all that stuff, you might get to ask some fun questions. But still, at the same time, like there was this big sort of rocky period in between where we just did not get along about anything after that, because essentially I had taken like their worldview and flipped it upside down, and like the way that they had planned for things to happen, they were no longer going to happen that way, and people don't deal with that very well in life. BE Gamer and the Deathborn ask, why don't you collab with other YouTubers? That's actually a really, really easy question. I am not a people person. I know it seems like it because I work on the internet, like entertaining a lot of people, but I'm actually like intensely private, and I just don't get along with people most, and not even like a way that I'm gonna just like fight with you. It's just, in general, I don't find a lot of common ground with most people, and so most of the time I just don't go out of my way to put myself in social situations. It's just, like I have my group of friends, like I have the people I know. I feel pretty like solid, like, the bandolier feels full, why add more to it? And I realize there's probably a fallacy or some kind of like stupid decision in there somewhere, but at this point in my life, I'm just not the kind of person that's gonna change. I'm pretty set in my ways. Not a people person, runs in the family. Nobody in my family really, they're very, very private people, not really people persons, or people, I guess. Yeah, that sucks when you have to pluralize that. But anyways, I was raised by people who are not really people, and like my grandparents are the same way, where they live, like for example, one of my grandparents lives like on a mountain in the middle of nowhere, like for real. They live on a mountain in the middle of nowhere, just like away from people, and that's just kind of the family that I was raised in. And so in general, I just don't like dealing with people. Like I don't have anxiety about it either, because some people are like, oh, do you have social anxiety? And I'm like, no, not really. I get anxious about things like job interviews and stuff like that, but I still go and I still, knock them out of the park and all that kind of fun stuff. But anyways, I don't know. I don't have social anxiety. I go to the store, I buy my groceries, I make small talk with people that I don't know, I crack jokes. And I do this on the internet, obviously. It's just like in real life, I just don't, like, in general, trust people. And that's just made me sort of, like, standoffish. And so it's very unlikely that I will ever focus or do a lot of collab content here. Some other people had asked as well, and so I figured I would answer it. The next question is by Michael Howie. Where do you see your YouTube and Twitch future going? Honestly, that is like the principal question for most mid-sized YouTubers like myself. I think that if you are somebody like Rooster Teeth, or if you're somebody like the Game Grumps, where you have like an established brand and this is like a major entertainment thing on the internet, I think that you could probably do this forever and that like things are probably going somewhere. But if you're middle-sized like I am, or smaller, like every day is sort of like, it's not like a hand-to-mouth situation because YouTube pays pretty well. But the problem with YouTube, I'll give you an example here, is like most YouTubers like myself, most of the money that we make is off of a previous series that has been done and over with for like a year now. In that situation, all it takes is for one copyright claim to sweep kick that video out from under you, and now you are no longer engaged in like a profitable venture. This is now a losing proposition for you overnight, and there's no way for you to stop that from happening. Once it happens, you're done like dinner, and essentially then you're scrambling to try and fix things. But in general, I've seen a number of people finish off that way, and there's many more factors that go into a Twitch and or YouTube career that are completely random. This is entertainment just like any other entertainment industry. And so it can fall out from under you at like a moment's notice. And so I honestly couldn't tell you. I really sincerely have no idea where this is going, if it's going anywhere, or what the future will hold. All I know is that like every day I wake up and I've got my routine and I keep putting up videos. And around about the time I can no longer support myself doing it, I'll probably go get a job. And I'll probably cut down to like one video a day, and then I'll probably stream like on weekends or something. But I don't know. I don't think that like it's going anywhere like in terms of like a career. But for right now, it's filling in space, and I figure that's good enough for the moment, I guess. Charles Harris asks, I just wanted to know what your favorite video game ending is. Tough one. I liked the ending to, you know, as much as I disliked Fable 3, I liked the ending. As much as I didn't, I liked Fable 2, I guess. I didn't like a lot of the decisions they make in Fable 2. I mean, for me, Fable has been a series that has just been like this since the first game. The first game was utterly fantastic, and then all the other ones just consistently get worse. Like, they started from a really good point where they were getting like a 15 out of 10 rating. And so, like, the second game, I would say was like a 9 out of 10. And then by the third game, I was kind of just like, I'm really having a hard time convincing myself to pre-order the fourth game. You know what I mean? It's like, The third game was just kind of a wash for me. But anyways, I liked the endings of all the Fable games. BioShock 1, the good ending, where you save all of the little sisters, I liked that ending. Not the one where you run around disemboweling children the entire game. I liked the good ending. It was really heartwarming, and I liked that a lot. I liked the end of Halo Reach. Not a giant Halo fan, but I loved how Halo Reach was all circular. Like, it started where it ended, and it ended where it began. I very much liked that as a concept, how they sort of had like a storyline Ouroboros thing going on. I liked it. I mean, I think it's a little bit cliche. Other games have done it before, but I still liked the way the cinematography and everything else played out inside of the game. And so I'd say those are probably the ones that pop to mind right now in terms of games that I really remember. Past that point, though, I liked the ending for This War of Mine, too. I liked how it gave you, like, a recap of everything that had happened. They did a really good job of fleshing out the characters in that game. And so those would be the ones that I can immediately think of up the top of my head. This is one of the problems with, like, doing everything ad-libbed and not really like coming up with prescribed answers to any of this. I kind of just answer as I go. I feel like it's more honest that way too, and you can't bullshit quite as hard. And believe me, I am like a world champion bullshitter. So anyways, John Kadzicki asks, have you ever thought about playing Magic the Gathering? I used to play a lot, actually. I used to have white border cards, and I played back in the late 90s when it was like a really cool thing. I went over to a friend's house, and we were just like bored one day, and he goes, hey, you want to play Magic? And I was like, what's that? I thought he was talking about like a Magic set or something. And he was like, no, it's like a Wizard Duel card game. You should check it out. So he had like 5 or 6 decks. I remember to this day, the first deck I played was a red deck. And it was a red deck with white borders. It was really old cards, I mean, by today's standards. And I enjoyed the hell out of it. And so for years and years after that, I played it a lot. I had 6 or 7 long boxes, but they got stolen. And so ultimately, I played Magic for a while. But after I lost my entire collection, I had a big collection that was like so much money invested. And when it got stolen, it was just... it was devastating. I just couldn't come back for it, and so I never played again. Cody Craig, what tabletop RPGs do you play? If not tabletop RPGs, then what are your favorite tabletop games in general? Okay, well, I'm going to go with the latter half of that question because I think I like a lot of board games. I just like board games in general. I'm a big board game fan, always have been. It's been something that I've been forced to kind of put on hiatus since I was on YouTube because I work a lot and I just don't have time to set up big group gatherings with like 6 or 7 people to play a board game anymore. But I like the classics. So I like Talisman, I like Prophecy, I like Arkham Horror. I think Arkham Horror is probably one of the best board games ever made. The setup and teardown are really, really long, but in terms of like how fast a new player can learn it and also just be a part of the group, I love how it's team play. Like, it's not all PvP because a lot of games have a PvP aspect, but when you have a lot of people over, you have to have the right personalities to like go at each other and play a competitive game with a big group. Sometimes you have like a bunch of people there with their girlfriends and they just kind of want to play a game where everybody's together, they've worked all day, they don't want to be like in a marital fight and they don't want to be kind of just like playing against each other in their free time. And what I like about Arkham Horror is that everybody's on the same team. It's quick to learn. The setup and teardown are kind of long, but I think Arkham Horror might be one of the best games ever made. Magic Realm, I would not recommend Magic Realm to most people. Magic Realm is kind of like an alternate D&D, but board game bound. It's hard to even describe to people. You've got to play it a bunch of times before you'll even understand really what's going on. It's a weird, weird game that was sort of like created as an answer. It was made like in the mid-90s as an answer to D&D in a board game. So it's like D&D but compact without the rule books, and it's an odd game, but Magic Realm's good. Return of the Heroes I like a lot. I already said Talisman and Prophecy. I like Runebound, but I think Runebound suffers a little bit from oversimplicity. I do like Descent, Journeys in the Dark, but once again, Descent is one of those things where you're going to have to pay like $400 just to get into it. Like the first set is like $120, and then all the expansion sets are like $70 or $80. And so it's just like it takes, and the game is not that good in the base box set. Like you have to have all the expansions because they make it better. And so it's like, it's a big cash shelling, it's the big shelling out of the cash before you can actually like play the game in a way that's going to be entertaining to most people who are into like D&D. Otherwise, it feels like a very, very good D&D light for people that are not into it. But if you're playing with people that are experienced with board gaming, they're going to want all the expansions because it's not very complicated in its most basic form. Nemaway asks, hello. I was wondering if you ever plan. I like how you put a hello at the beginning. You're like, hello. I like how it followed like all of the, you know, the conversational, it followed all of the conversational contracts that need to be like signed. Like we have like a greeting and then we have like a body. I like it. I don't know. It's classical and I enjoy it. I was wondering if you ever plan to go to Europe. Yeah, I definitely. If I ever get some money together, I'd love to go to Europe. It's something that I think I don't have kids. I don't have like a family or anything like that. And so I've always wanted to travel, but it's weird how like you sink yourself into work and then there never seems to be more than like 2 or 3 days at a time that you could get out. And since visiting Europe, I'd be on a plane for the first day for like 14, 15 hours, unless they go the way. Sometimes they take a different route. Like sometimes they go overland and then they cut to Europe, and I'm on the west coast of the United States, and then sometimes they go up and over the pole kind of, and it cuts it down a little bit, but I don't know which they would do. Either way, though, I would love to visit Europe. There's no specific area. The second half of his question is, where would you prefer to go and why? Or actually, if you preferred to live in the EU, where would you prefer to live and why? I don't know. If I was in the EU, I would probably stick with something familiar because I don't speak a lot of foreign languages or anything like that. I'd probably go with somewhere like England or, you know, Ireland or Scotland or Wales or something like that. I think Wales would probably be the best call since I have familial connections there. That would probably be the safest, just so I had like a safety net or something if it didn't work out, and I also have people to socialize with, like when I get there that are family, so they kind of have to put up with you. But if I spoke other languages, I mean, I would love to see Germany, France, Portugal, Spain. I'd love to hit all of it. The Czech Republic, like everything. Like, I'm the kind of person where I just want to see the whole thing. I'd love to get up into Scandinavia at some point. But it all comes down to, like I said, it's weird how life moves along. And like you sink yourself into work and just like things don't happen. I don't know, maybe it's time to make some time for it. Aaron Guaret wants to know, is it possible for us to get a Shadowrun Genesis LP? This is no doubt due to the fact that I bring it up all the time. I could do it. I could emulate it and I could capture it and we could do it. I hesitate because the game is very grindy. And if you have nostalgia like I have, you can sit there and just like grind it all day, every day and just like have a blast with it. But for a YouTube series, I think it would be a tough one. It would be a really, really tough one because it's the sort of game where grinding matters. So you can't cut out the grind because the grind is important. But at the same time, the grind is very lengthy. And there's a lot of dead time in that game where it's like, okay, I've got to raise 150,000 new yen to make this thing happen over here. Or I need to raise 200,000 new yen so I can buy a new cyber deck. Or our last job didn't go so well, one of my characters got killed, so now we got to pay medical bills, and I can't afford those, and so I got to let you go off your contract because the game will heal you automatically. Then I got to rehire you, and it's just like, there's a lot of like weird things in that game that can potentially turn into very, very long escapades that don't necessarily have a narrative backing. It's all randomly generated. So it's a game where the grind matters, but it's very grindy. And so it leaves you in a weird catch-22 where you would have a lot of like, did I say catch-22? Catch-22. There's a T in there. T. See, I should have done my vocal workouts before I started. I don't do those, by the way. I'm just joking. But yeah, it's a weird game that puts you in a catch-22 because it could become lengthy and boring and grindy. But at the same time, if you omit anything, very important things happen during the grind that will randomly come up where you'll just be like, ah! And if the player or the viewer misses that, then it would be disappointing. So I don't know. It's a tough one. I might do it. Next question is from Halen Douglas. Do you consider YouTube a career or a job? And that's actually a pretty important distinction. I don't know. It could be a career if it got bigger, but right now we're kind of like on a plateau that we've been on for about a year now where things have not gotten better, but they have not gotten worse either. And if something's to be a career, I expect it to sort of be like upwards the whole way. Like you'll have plateaus, but there will definitely be some form of advancement in each fiscal year. That's just the way that I look at things. I came from the IT field. I came from, you know, a number of different places before I did this. And if you're not going anywhere in a job, I'm the kind of person that's just like, well, screw it, I'm going to go do something else then. And I tend to cycle my careers around a lot because of that. As of right now, I would say it's a job. I mean, if it gets bigger, then it could be a career. But like I said earlier with the previous question, if you're an established brand that was on that first wave of like internet media, then you're probably fine. But if you're like me, where you're a late adopter and you're kind of just sort of in front of the breakers and not really sure, it's very, very sort of tumultuous and it's hard to tell. I couldn't give you a real answer right there. I'd say that it could be a career, but right now it's definitely a job. I don't know. Alan Bravo asks, hello, Splats. Back when you were an employee, did you ever have a job that you hated and why? Yeah, all of them. Every single one of them. IT was the only job that I ever enjoyed or felt satisfied with. All the other ones I absolutely just loathed. I hated being a busboy. I hated being a waiter. I hated working at Blockbuster until I liked Blockbuster once my friends and I ran everything and like we were managers and basically the franchise was ours. I didn't mind that, but it was still a shit job. I mean, it was still a terrible job. It was fun because all my friends worked there and we like ran the place, but it was still a shitty job. Like there's a reason that company went out of business. It's because it was a shitty company that ran a shitty business. Anyways, I've hated most of my jobs. I've never been a person that's been satisfied with any real labor. I like YouTube. I mean, YouTube, I would say, is the only other job other than IT that I feel like my routine is satisfying, and I feel like I don't wake up every day just like, ugh. But yeah, all my other jobs in general, I just loathed. Like, every single day was just kind of like a challenge. Just be like, and not even like a satisfying challenge, because there's a difference. Like, sometimes you have a satisfying challenge, and then other times you have just like every single day is just an uphill grind that has no satisfaction or enjoyment involved whatsoever. And so I would say most of my jobs I hated. So if you're in a job that you hate right now, be aware, I think that's part of the fundamental experience. My dad used to say that. He'd be like, it wouldn't be a job if it was fun. My dad used to say that all the time when I was a kid. He's like, that's why it's called a job. You're not supposed to like it. I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's that. Polar Puff asks, have you ever met any fans in real life? Nope. Not a single time. Never met any fans. I've seen people for a second that like stared at me like they might recognize me, but that might have just been me hoping. I don't know. It might have just been them staring at me because I was staring at them being like, why are you staring at me? Why are you staring at me? I'm not really sure. I've never met a fan in real life. I don't think my reach goes that far on the internet, in all honesty. I think people see that you have like 240,000 subscribers or whatever. I don't even know how, 225,000. I don't pay attention to it anymore because subscribers are not, it's not an important number on YouTube. But anyways, people see that you have like 250,000 fans and they assume that like you must have run into somebody. But realistically, unless you're at like 7 to 10 million people on YouTube, it's very, very unlikely that on any like given day, somebody's going to be like, oh my God, what's up, dude? Like, I don't know. I've never met anybody. I don't think my reach goes that far. It'd be cool to meet somebody sometime. I'd like to go to conventions, and I just always fail to get the tickets on time and stuff like that, so I don't know. Newbie McNewerson wants to know, I've been thinking about getting my ears pierced, so I was wondering if you had to do it over again, would you still get your ears pierced with the metal discs? What type of maintenance is required? You don't start right here, so I've got half an inch. Hey, you don't start there. I started with just a normal earring that was like a 14 gauge or something like that, just like a little stud. Like that's where most people start. And I would actually recommend away from getting like surgery done. Like some people are really impatient and they're like, well, I've got money and I don't want to wait a year to stretch my ears properly. And so they go in and they get a procedure done that they kind of like cut it open and then they sew it shut on the side so that like overnight they can stretch their ears. It's don't do it. Don't do it. I have a lot of friends who are piercers and tattoo artists, and in general, you should do it the right way. So I started out very, very small with just like a normal earring that anybody would get if they went to like Claire's or whatever and they gave you an ear piercing with a gun. I got mine done with a needle. They just went straight through and they did it on both sides. The maintenance that's required is actually only on the front end. So when you first get your ears pierced, you need to like wash them every day with just like first aid disinfectant. I used to wash mine 3 times a day and they still got infected and it was still a huge pain in the ass. And so even washing your ear holes a lot when they're an open wound, they still might get infected no matter what you do. It's just kind of a risk that you take. They're not going to get like super infected though. As long as you keep washing them, they'll eventually heal and it'll be perfectly fine. After that, what you do is it's been a long time since I stretched last. I've stopped at 1/2 inch. I really have no plans to go any bigger. I've been here for probably about 2 years now. I think that it's like every 6 to 8 weeks you can stretch again. And you go up by 1 gauge size or maybe 2 gauge sizes. I double jumped a couple times, so I went from 14 to 10. It didn't hurt. It was really, really easy. And then they just put the new piercing in and you're good to go. And then I went from a 10 to a 6 and then a 6 to a 4. And after that, what happens is the sizes, they get much, much larger in between each jump. So the difference between like a 16 and a 14 is like almost nothing. But the difference between like a 00 and 7/16 is actually quite a lot. And it's going to start hurting more and more when you stretch longer and longer. But anyways, as long as you wait long enough, your ears become elastic and they'll go up to the next size perfectly fine. It'll be uncomfortable for a second, but once you get the piercings in, you're good to go. And you can have that done by a professional. Piercers will do it for you for like $25 plus the cost of the piercing that you bought, the jewelry. I did all my own stretching after I got to like 4 gauge. I just started stretching myself and it was super easy. Just don't jump. The people I know that have had blowouts and they've had problems with their ears, they're the people that jump from like 10 to like 2. Never, ever, ever jump more than like... honestly, if I'm giving you advice, never skip a gauge. Always go in order. With some of the bigger gauges you can. I'm sorry, with some of the smaller gauges you can. So if you're going to jump from like a 14 to a 10, that's not a huge deal. But if you're going to jump from like a 0 to a 1/2 inch, there's the serious risk that something bad's going to go wrong with your ears, and you should probably just do it in order and do it carefully. That's the last question that I have for today. If I didn't get your question, I apologize. I can't fit everybody in, but ask me again down below. Some questions I don't answer because I feel like they're overly personal, and I'm just not ready to get like that. And so if I skipped a question a bunch of times, just know that it might be touching on something I don't really want to talk about just yet. But this is our Q&A series. I very much enjoy it. I told you that at the beginning. This is my favorite series. If you have a question for me, leave it down below in the comments. I will do my best to filter through. I get a lot. I get like 200 questions every single time I do this, and it blows my mind that so many people want to know like just the way that I think or like what I view things as. And I enjoy the fact that people want to hear me just bullshit about things because I'm good at bullshitting. I like bullshitting. And so you're allowing me to do something fun for me while at the same time getting something from me for yourself. It's symbiotic. And so anyways, I will see you all later. I always do this at the end of the Q&As because I don't do it anywhere else. If you'd like to support the channel, people always ask how they can. Look down below in the description if you sign up for Loot Crate. I'm a Loot Crate partner. It's a little box that you've seen me do my unboxings. If you use my code, it actually helps them track things and they just pay me for that. Like, it doesn't cost you anything. They pay me per subscriber that signs up with my code though. And so I'll just be honest with you. I've never been one of those YouTubers that's like, use my code and blah, 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 and they bullshit a whole bunch and they give you the salesmanship. I'd rather just be honest because honestly, it's just supplementary for me. The other thing that you can do is I do have a Patreon. So if you wanted to support the channel on a month-to-month basis, they have, you can donate automatically every month. And if that's not to your liking, well, I've got a PayPal as well. You can check that out on the Twitch page. So anyways, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate you all being here. It was a blast. I love doing the Q&A series. So I'll see y'all next week on Friday. If you didn't get your question done, ask it again. I'll try and get it next time. Hi to everybody.